No, you're fine, you're fine. It's 11 now. Okay, and starting webinar. And
welcome, everybody. I'm excited you're here. This is Introduction to Silhouette. And so this is for beginners. Just so you know, this class is live right now. So you are welcome wherever you're viewing from to type your questions into your chat, and we'll get those. I've got McKenna that will feed those to me so I can answer those ones. And this is being recorded, so you will have access to it later. If there are technical issues, we apologize in advance, but this is live and technical, so we sometimes get that kind of thing. To give you an introduction myself, my name is Kelly Wayment, and I have been a Silhouette superfan since the first time I opened my machine in 2008, my very first one, and I have been, I love it so much, love the software. I've been teaching classes and tutorials ever since. I will go over a few of the references that you might want to go to later. If this class is only an hour, so I'm going to show you some other places where you can get great beginner information, beginner, intermediate, advanced, whatever stage you're at, there's more information for you. So I'm glad you're here, and we will go ahead and get started. I'm going to screen share my computer so you can see where I'm going and what I'm talking about. All right, so you should be able to see my Silhouette Studio screen, but first I'm going to open a web browser and show you some of the resources that you want to refer to later. So this is YouTube and Silhouette Inc. This is the channel that you want to follow, you want to refer to, subscribe, whatever. This is where you're going to get a lot of great information. So if you scroll down a little bit, right here, Silhouette 101 video classes, that is a playlist that is great for beginner to intermediate. So all of these classes cover things like specifically everything you can do with vinyl, then everything you can do with heat transfer. There's kind of a designing in Silhouette Studio, all sorts of things. And so this playlist, Silhouette 101 video classes, you want to refer to those. Those were recorded with the Cameo 3, but the software is the same. And so you can use that you can modify it for whatever video or whatever machine you're using. Another place besides YouTube is the Silhouette 101 blog. So that is silhouette101.com, and this also has a wealth of information. If you go to these various headers, you've got get started information where you can find product information, manuals. You go to tutorials, you've got free ebooks that go along with a lot of those classes that I showed you on the YouTube playlist, software how-tos, all sorts of things. So look at these little headers in silhouette101.com to find what you're looking for. Or if you just scroll through, you can see the recent blog posts and just keep going and looking through blog posts, because most of those are tutorials. All right, and then the third resource is the Silhouette America website. So that is silhouetteamerica.com. And this is where you can compare machines. This is where you download your software. This is where you can find support for like frequently asked questions. It's a great resource. I'm going to show you real quickly, if you don't already have a Silhouette machine, what you want to do is on silhouetteamerica.com, you want to go to shop and then click machines. And that is going to let you click on these various machines to learn all about them. So if you're trying to figure out comparing between two machines, that's a great place to go. Now, if you already have a machine and maybe you haven't set up your software or you're just getting started, what you do for the software that will run your silhouette cutting machine is go to software and then click get software. And this looks a little different than it did if you haven't been on here for the last couple weeks. It looks a little bit different. For using your silhouette machine, you are only worried right here about Silhouette Studio. So if you've got a portrait or a cameo or a curio, what you want is Silhouette Studio. So if you click on Silhouette Studio, that is where you can download, and then you can install the regular software. You can get upgrades, which unlock additional features in the software. What you want for most users is the current release version. So right now that's 4.4.554, and that will change once updates happen. You're generally good to go with the current release. And most users, there's a Mac version, and then there's a Windows version. Most Windows users are going to be using the 64-bit. The 32-bit is mainly for really old computers and maybe low powered as far as functionality, like netbooks or Chromebooks or something like that. But you probably want the Windows 64-bit if you're a Windows user. You've got this right here. Click here for minimum system requirements. And then this one I want to show you. This one's a really nice place to go. Click here for Silhouette Studio feature comparisons. So click here, and this is going to compare your different editions. So we're going to work with Basic Edition today. It's also called Standard Edition. That's the free version that everybody can use, and it is amazing all on its own. It does so much, and if you just spend a little bit of time in it, you will love it also. And then you also have versions that you can upgrade to. So Designer Edition Plus, and Business Edition. You can see the little check marks on what is available in each of those features. But what I want to point out is all of these features have a little video icon, or at least almost all of them have a little video icon. And what you do is, if you're not sure how to use that feature or what that feature is, you can just click that video icon and it will take you straight to a how-to video on it. It's usually not in-depth. It's 2 minutes, sometimes as much as 8 minutes, a short overview on exposing you to what that feature is. And then it's up to you to play with it and work with it. So that edition comparison chart is a really great place, really great reference for you. All right, so let's go ahead, and if you have, one more thing I want to mention, if you have not already set up your account, you'll use the same email address for your software and your design store, which is the designs you can buy well, the designs you'll use for the software to cut. So your machine, your software, and your design store account is all the same email address and password. And you can do that in support and machine setup. And you can register your new machine. You can set up your account here. All of that's available. All right, so let's go ahead and go into Silhouette Studio. So this is downloaded. Once you download Silhouette Studio from the website, then you just install it like you do any other program. And this is how it will open up. So this is called the design page. And then you've got 4 main tabs in the upper right corner. Now I know there's a lot of times, if you're watching the recording later, this is a little bit hard to see. So let me see if I can zoom in. And I don't know if that helps you see any more. Don't look at where my cursor is, but just look at those 4 tabs. You've got design, you've got store, you've got library, and you've got send. So design is where you will be doing all of your designing. And then store is where you will buy your designs. Let me go back to normal size. So if I'm going to click on the store tab. And this is going to open up the Silhouette Design Store. This is where you purchase your designs. And so you can just scroll through, see what you like. You can type in the search bar the type of design you're looking for. There's all these categories. You can just kind of click through and browse. But what you want to know is that you can get a free design every single week. And I recommend downloading those designs because they're free. And once you've downloaded it to your library, you keep it forever. And you can sometimes use pieces of those in other designs because the software is so easy to use. So sometimes I've got a free design that had part of the design was like a little heart that was cuter than any other heart I was seeing. So I just used that heart from the free design. So I've clicked on free designs, and you can see right here, there's a free design of the week, a little snowdrop flower. So all you need to do is add it to your cart. And then you can either check out right here, or there's a little checkout in the upper right corner. But if you just click this checkout button, it's going to open that for you, and you can just, all of your designs you've got here are ready to purchase. If you want an SVG option, that is something that can be used in other software programs. And so you may want to use the SVG. If you're beginner in Silhouette and all you're using is a Silhouette machine, you don't need to worry about these extra buttons. You would just check out and buy it as is. And it's just going to ask for your password, which if you haven't already set it up, you can do that. But just type in your password and it will, see if I can think and type at the same time. Okay, never mind. I forgot my password, even though I've had the same password for many years. We don't need it anyways. Once you do,
question.
Okay.
So someone on the Zoom is wondering, sorry, what is the difference between an SVG file and a studio file?
So the difference between an SVG file and a studio file is that Silhouette Studio files will only work in Silhouette Studio. So if you have a Silhouette Studio file, but you've got some other cutting machine or some other software, you can't open the Silhouette Studio file in any other program. But an SVG file is something that can be used in various software programs. So like, I don't know, I'll just throw out there Inkscape, which is a free software. You can open SVGs in that program, and you can create SVGs in that program. And so SVG is just a little bit more versatile if you want to use those designs in other programs, other software programs. But if all you're using is a Silhouette machine, then you can stick with the Silhouette Studio file. Okay, so we are in Standard Edition. I've shown you the Design tab, the Store tab. The Library tab is where your designs will show up after you download them. So like once I had checked out on that free design, you go to Recent Downloads, and this is where all your recent downloads will be. And you can just double click to open any file. And then go back to my design page. We'll talk about the final tab, the Send tab later. That's where you actually send the cutting job to your machine. For right now, we'll go in the main design area. And I just want to go over just a few things that you're going to use all the time. So you've got your menu options at the top, same as any software program. You've got your file and edit. What I like to do in Silhouette Studio is use these icons. They're really helpful, and you've got an extra little help there. When you hover over an icon, a tooltip will pop up, so you know what that icon means. So if I'm hovering over this little disk, most of you know that's save, but it tells you that's the save button. There's the open button. There's the new drawing or new document. You've got copy, paste, undo, redo. So this one's your friend, this little backwards arrow, undo button. You'll use that a lot. And then some fun zoom features. So if you want to zoom in on your document, you can click the little plus magnifier, zoom out, the little minus magnifier. I like this one because it will it'll zoom in specifically to an area that I choose. So if I want to zoom in to just the upper left corner of my document, I'll click that button, and I can either click once on the upper left corner and it'll zoom into that, or I can just drag a little box of where I want it to zoom into, and that zooms in nicely just to that spot. And then zoom in and out quickly is this double arrow, and you just move your mouse up and down and it will move in and out really fast. And so if you open a document that's got a lot of pieces on it, a lot of 3D paper crafts will have a lot. And so I like this double arrow zoom. And then you've got a pan where you just click and drag to move it to where you want. And then your final one is fit to window. So if you ever want to get back to looking at the full media size all at once, just click that and it'll bring you back. So I'll use that a lot. And sometimes I get questions on that, but that's just fit to window. It gets you back to the full document size onto the page. All right, then along the left side, these are your tools. So some of the most used tools you'll have are this select button. Sometimes if you have one of these other tools working and it stays selected, just click back on this arrow to get your select button again, and that'll cancel out that other tool from continuing on. Your line drawing tools, you've got some options here. So it's called the line tool, and then you've got a straight line and some other fun lines. These all have how-to videos on our Silhouette YouTube channel. There are some basic shapes. So if you're doing basic, if you've got basic addition, then you've got a rectangle, a rounded rectangle, an ellipse for ovals or circles, and then a polygon. So you can actually draw a polygon and change how many sides it's got. So that's kind of a nice one. I'm just going to delete that. And then if you upgrade your Silhouette Studio to more advanced editions, you will get some extra tools also, but we're just sticking with basic today. All right, do we have any questions so far? Hopefully this isn't too boring, but this is all really good information for beginners. On the left, we've got something you'll use a lot is the fill panel. And so actually, you probably won't use this one very much. I don't. What I meant to point out was that you've got your fill colors on the quick access toolbar. So over here on the right-hand side are panels that have in-depth tools, but up here on the top, you've got a quick access toolbar that will change depending on what you are trying to do on your page. So right now, I don't have any objects on my page. So let me draw just a rounded rectangle with my drawing tool. And now you've seen that this fills in a little bit with some other options. So I can, if I select this, I can choose any fill color I want. I can change the line color, which is this little box right next to it. Red is the default. So when you draw a new shape, it starts out as red, but you can change the line color. And there are various reasons why you might want to do that. We're not going to get into that right now. You've also got line thickness, various line styles. So you can change to various dashed lines, perforations you might want to use them for. And then you can see that you've got some other options like scale. You can make your shapes bigger or smaller percentage-wise, or you can type in the size that you want. You've got move tools, alignment tools. So if you want to align things together, and we will actually do that in just a minute so we can prepare something to cut. But I just wanted to show you there's a lot of these tools on the top in the quick access toolbar that will change depending on what you are working with. So no text options right now, but if I were using text on the page, which is over here, if I click text and just type something, then all of a sudden I've got options for changing the font and the point size. So I can change all that quickly over here. And then I've also got options on the right-hand side. I've got a text style panel that will open up. That will give me a lot more options like line spacing and character spacing that aren't going to show up in your frequently used tools on the quick access toolbar. Another one you might use is the offset. You've got a quick offset over here on the top on your quick access toolbar, but I like the offset panel. Over here, it looks like a star with kind of an outline on it. So if I open the offset panel, and I'm just going to drag that panel closer over here and zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. So I've got my text selected, and if I click offset, that's going to create kind of this border around it. And you can change how thick or thin that offset is. So that is a really nice tool that you might use quite often. And once you've got the size, the distance the way you want, then you just click apply and it kind of welds itself together. So you've got your original text and then you've got your offset. So those are something you as a beginner, it's really helpful for you. Okay, so I think that's all we're going to go over for the most often used panels. I'm going to click fit to window to go back to my normal size. When you open a new document, and you can do this with this little tiny plus symbol along your other open documents. If you click that, that opens a new document. And what that will do is get you a fresh document, and every time you click that, that'll refresh your panels. So you've got your page setup panel again. What you want to do with your page setup panel, this is important. You want to choose the machine you're working with. So today I'm working with a Cameo machine. You've got various options. I'm going to go with my Cameo machine. I want to use my Cameo 12 by 12 inch cutting mat. And these options below will actually change based on what machine you choose. So like you can't choose a portrait machine and tell it you're going to use a 12 by 12 inch Cameo mat because it just wouldn't fit, and it's smart enough to know that. But if I choose a Cameo machine, then I do have quite a few options for mats that do fit in the Cameo machine. And then also none. If I was cutting like vinyl or heat transfer without a mat, without a cutting mat, you just choose none. But for now, I'm going to use the Cameo cutting mat. And my media size, you can choose whatever you want. And you can change your width and your height. I like to set my media size to match whatever I'm actually cutting. That just makes things a lot less confusing. You can, and then finally, you should check the box for show cut border. There's various reasons that you might want to have that showing. I always leave show cut border checked. That makes sure that whatever is within my cutting area, I can actually cut, because if it's outside, if I've got a design outside my cutting area, it will not cut. So you can slide your transparency. That's not super helpful right now because I have the grid turned on. So I'm going to turn off the grid by pressing G on my keyboard, makes my grid disappear. Then transparency, you can see your mat below it. So it's a good reflection of whatever you see on your cutting mat is how the machine is going to cut it. It's going to match exactly. So if you have a small scrap of paper and you didn't set your media size, but you knew you had room in this top 1 inch area to put like a little star or a heart, you'd put it there and it would cut it exactly in that spot on your machine. All right, so let's go ahead and just create a design. And this will use a couple of tools that are fun. I'm going to do, let's do a little gift tag this time. So over here on the left, I've got my drawing tool. So I'm going to choose a rounded rectangle. And I'll just click and drag and that'll create a rounded rectangle. Now, if I want a perfect square or perfect circle, I can hold my shift key while I move my mouse around and it will stay perfectly proportioned. As soon as I let go of my shift key, then I can change how it is. So let's go, maybe about 2 inches by 3 inches. If I want to change that exactly, I can change that in my quick access toolbar. So say I want to do 2 inches wide exactly and 3 inches high exactly. As long as I have the little unlock button, I can change those individually. As soon as I lock that, then when I change one, so let's say I change my mind and I want it 1.75, it's going to, when I hit enter, it's going to change the other one so the proportions stay the same. So when you're changing your dimensions, just make sure you're paying attention to whether that is locked or unlocked. All right, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Hopefully you can see what's on my screen. I can thicken the line if it's not visible, but I'll just assume it's okay. So I can do just this rounded rectangle. Also a fun thing is if I hold my shift key and drag on these little red nodes, I can change that corner. If I don't hold my shift key, it'll change them independently, but I usually hold my shift key. So I'll make that a little bit more rounded. And then let's make this a little more exciting. We'll do an oval. And kind of see what shape that gets us. So right now I could try and align these perfectly, but an easy way to do that is to select them at the same time and choose this center option. This will align their center vertically and horizontally. So yeah, I kind of like that. And then I'm going to turn these into one shape. I want these not to cut individually. I want them to be one shape. And so I'll just click weld. Another thing you can do to access some of these options is to use your right click button. I really like my right click button because it will bring up a lot of menu options that are that you would typically use with that function. Use that a lot. So copy and paste and that kind of thing. All right, so since I want this to be a tag, I also need a little hole. So I'm going to use my ellipse tool to draw a circle and hold my shift key and make it about 1/4 inch. And then again, to align this perfectly, I'm going to choose these align options and choose align center. And it's got a visual representation on these options so you know, so you kind of know what it's centering on. Okay, so I could group this and this will all now move together. I'm also going to make a copy. So I've got a quick little duplicate button here on the top. So I've made a copy. And I'm going to, because I want to show you something in just a second, I'm going to ungroup this. And this time I'm going to turn that hole, instead of just grouping so it moves together, I'm going to use this hole to cut into the other shape. So I'm going to choose right click and make compound path. So these look the same, right? They move together. They're the same size. Watch what happens when I fill this with color. So I'm just going to choose kind of a pink color. And this is the difference between something that's grouped and a compound path. Now this is maybe getting a little more advanced, but I do have a point with this. This doesn't matter if I'm cutting it out of colored paper, because either way it's going to cut that hole. But there is a difference between something that's grouped and a compound path. And you have a way to access that. If something isn't ungrouping completely, you can usually still release a compound path to release parts, or if you want a hole in it instead of something grouped, you can make a compound path. And I'm not going to go any further on that, but let's go. Oh, I do want to change my media size to letter and go back to normal size. I'm going to go letter size and vertical portrait orientation. Okay, and so now we're going to go to the send panel. One more thing I want to mention, when you are saving files, I highly recommend that when you save a file, you choose save as and save to hard drive. Your other option is save to library, and that's going to fill up your library cloud space. And if you make 100 projects over the course of a year and you save them all to your library, but you don't ever really need more than 5% of those, then you're kind of wasting your library space. You almost certainly have more room on your hard drive. So I save to my hard drive all of my creations I make that I can access them later if I want to. I do save occasionally to my library if it's something that I know I will use time and time again. So like this tag, it's kind of cute. So I might save it to my library and then I've got it to access it later. All right, so let's go to the Send tab. And I want to show you the difference here. Some important things. Okay, so I'm using a Cameo 4 and a Portrait 3 will be the same way. If these machines have auto tool detection, and so if my machine isn't connected yet, I'm not going to have all of my options. So I left my machine unplugged just to show you that I don't have all of those options yet. So when I connect my machine, that is going to think for just a minute. If it doesn't find your machine, you can click on the list down here to find which machine is available. I'm looking for a USB connection and I want it to show available. And in this case, it's showing ready to load. So that's the one that I want. It actually already found it because it's showing in green here, ready to load. And then also with the Cameo 4 or Portrait 3, I need a tool installed. So my choices won't completely show until I've got a tool in there also. I'll show you that in just a second, but I want to stay on the software briefly. So just know that I'm putting my Cameo 4 cutting blade in there, my auto blade. Okay, and so now it detects my tool and I can choose my material and it will give me options to adjust. What I want to show you before we actually cut anything is that the difference between cut and no cut and cut edge. So these right now, they're both set to cut. That's the default. That's going to cut whatever is showing. If I say no cut, then I could leave them on the page and they won't actually cut at this time, which a lot of times if you're doing like a test cut or cutting various things just one at a time, that's helpful to be able to turn off those cut lines. Now, if I choose cut edge on both of those, you can see that this hole, let me zoom in a little bit. This hole over here on the one that's grouped, that has disappeared. And the hole where I actually cut out a hole by making a compound path, it will still cut that hole. And so when you're on cut edge, it is only going to cut the outermost edge of overlapping shapes, whether they're grouped or not. So this hole, this circle, is just sitting on this other layer. It's just overlapping. And so that's why cut edge is only going to cut that outer edge. And this one, it's not just something resting in there. It's actually, I don't know if you can see it, where it overlaps. You can see the two different colors, the matte versus the virtual media. It is a hole. It's not just resting on top. So that's not considered an overlapping shape, and that's why it will cut with cut edge. So if I want to, so it just depends on what you want to do with your design. If you've added text to your design, I almost always will choose cut edge, because then I don't have to turn individual things off. And so this one I want to cut. I can actually just set them both back to cut, and that's going to cut what I want. One other thing I should mention is that if you drag something off of your virtual media, here's this cut border that we talked about briefly to show cut border. As soon as you've moved something off of that cut area, it's not going to cut. So if it's on your virtual media and the cut lines are turned on, you can see those bold lines, then it will cut. Do I have anybody that's lost, or is that seem to be okay? All right. So let's go ahead and get this ready. I am going to test cut just to show how that works. So what I'm going to be doing once I load my paper on is I'm going to click this little button down here for test, and it's going to cut a little square and triangle to kind of test my settings. The material I want to choose, for most cardstock I use textured heavy. My action is cut, my tool is auto blade, and those settings look good to start with. If I've got a new sharp blade, those settings usually work well, and we will test that. So let me stop my screen share. Okay, so now I've got a piece of paper. I want to cut those two little tags. Let me show you these blades. So I'm using the Cameo 4, but the software is mostly the same, with the exception of the send panel. The software works on all of your Silhouette cutting machines. The send panel is where it gets a little bit different. And then your tools with the Cameo 4 and Portrait 3 are a little bit different because they have automatic tool detection. So this is my auto blade. It will use whatever I say in the software to adjust itself before it cuts. So my software said it was going to cut with the blade on 3. So it's going to do some tapping motions once it is ready to cut and set itself to a 3. If I'm using either of these kind of manual blades, this is the older style ratchet blade in the adapter, which you need for Cameo 4. But if you're using an older machine, that's the ratchet blade that you'll use. So what you would do on these two manual blades is actually change the depth based on what the software tells you it wants to cut at. So for cardstock, it told me to cut on a 3. So I would just twist my blade with this newer style manual blade to a 3. And then if I am using this older style, there's actually a little hole in any of your cutting machines that will let you line up the arrow with this red mark, and it will let you adjust to the number it's supposed to be for cutting. So back to 0 so I don't forget about that. I really like my auto blade, so that's what I use all the time. So I can go ahead and put my auto blade in the machine. With the Cameo 4, it's got, and the Portrait 3, it's got a flat side, so you want that flat side towards the back. And just drop it in there, and you want to make sure that that gets pushed all the way down. So I kind of lift up as I'm putting it in and push all the way down, and then you slide that in. You'll hear the little click as it locks. So you don't want any gap there between the blade and the blade holder. You want that to be completely flush down there. And so that's in the right place. And so now let's get the paper onto the mat. So this protective liner, you want to keep it because it'll keep your mat sticky while you're not using it. Keeps it protected. And I want my paper to go on my mat exactly the way it showed on the screen. So if it's anything smaller than 12 by 12 that you set your media size to, it's just going to line up on the upper left corner. And you can actually use either side of this mat. You can see it's got arrows on either side. Either way can go into the machine. You just need to make sure that as you're loading into the machine, that real paper looks the same as your virtual paper.
Kelly, we have a question from the Zoom. Someone is, sorry, let me turn some. Sorry, we have a question from the Zoom. So somebody's asking, how do you get your paper from sticking to the mat and ripping?
So I personally like a really sticky mat. The cuts are cleaner. It doesn't go sliding all over the place. And the only issue is if your paper is not sturdy enough, if it's not heavy enough, it can tend to stick really well to your mat. So you'll see this when I take it off also. A brand new mat, I would never put something like copy paper on for a standard tack mat. The copy paper is too thin and delicate. But I would do cardstock for a while until your mat gets a little less sticky. But when it comes time to take it off, just flip your mat over and you peel your mat away from your paper. And so this is almost a brand new mat. I think I've used it twice, and you can see that didn't have any tearing and it didn't curl my paper. If I pull my paper off of my mat, that's when it will tend to curl or tear. Some people will dab like a cloth on their mat before they use it for the first time, so it'll make it a little less sticky. Personally, I don't like to do that. I like my mat sticky, and I just make sure that I only use cardstock for, I don't know, maybe the first 10 projects or so. You can tell when your mat is getting a little less sticky, and then you can use lighter materials on it. So I usually keep a couple different mats that are a different amount of stickiness, and that way I've got my choice on when I'm cutting. All right, so let's go. Let's load this. So I'm loading the left edge of the mat so it lines up with this loading guide. It's got little arrows pointing to it. If you have your mat too far to the left or to the right, you're going to have issues because your little rollers need to be gripping your mat completely, or it will start to move as it cuts. And then also in any machine that has an auto blade, if you've got your mat too far to the left, it's going to stop your auto blade from adjusting correctly, and your blade won't change the way it's supposed to do. And then also on a Cameo, you've got adjustable rollers. So you want to make sure if you're using the mat that the roller is set to its outermost part where it's gripping the mat and not rolling on the sticky part. Okay, so I'll just load that. and we'll do a test cut. I'm not going to turn on the software screencast again because I'm just going to click the test button and you guys can watch the machine. Okay, so that did just a little test cut that's built in the software. You can also choose to do your own practice cut. So you could set like a letter B or something and place it anywhere on the page while your other designs are turned off. And that way you can choose where it's doing its practice cut. So I'm going to unload that and see if that cut nicely. And it did. I'm not getting any tearing, any of the parts holding each other. And so that was a good test cut. If I did need to do another test cut, I can actually move either in the software, it's got little 4 arrows, or I can use the ones on the machine. And with a portrait, you would use it in the software. But I can just scroll my blade down to where I need to for a new test cut. And wherever the blade is hovering over the paper, that becomes the upper left corner of that square for the test cut, just to give you an idea. But I don't need to do a second test cut. That's good. I'm going to unload it to reset it. Load it again. And let me turn on my software real quick. I just want you to see. Do a screen share. Okay, so I just want you to see down here for that test cut, I clicked on that little test button, but to actually send the job, I'm going to click on this little blue button that says send. Okay, so I heard some funny noises in the back. So I just clicked pause. I don't think you can see it right now, but it's just on your control panel over on the right. I clicked pause and that stopped my machine. It's not always instantaneous, but it will stop your job as soon as it can. And I know that cut is messed up, so I'm just going to unload it. The reason I was getting that sound in the back, let me just show you. It looks like probably the last person that used this machine was cutting 12-inch vinyl, and so, or heat transfer. And so it's got these little, for my cross cutter, okay, so when you're using the cross cutter, you pull these down to clamp it, and then you can use your little roller across the back. But you have to always make sure when you're done using the cross cutter that you lift those tabs back up so it's not blocking the back edge of the machine. So that's why that made that crazy noise. If that happens, don't panic. All you have to do is hit pause. You can turn off your machine, although that's not my favorite, to just turn it off in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move where those are. So if I just move them, it's going to cut in their new spot. And I think the first one actually cut just fine. And so I'm going to turn off that one to no cut. And all I have to do is find a new place for this guy. So I'll just put him in the lower left corner. And so he's got bold red lines. So he's the only one that's going to cut when I click send. So I will load that again. And click send, which I've already shown you. Oh, the other thing, share again. Sorry for this back and forth. I just want you to know how to fix problems as they come up, because we don't want you to be scared of your machine. It's really fine. It's all fine. Okay, so when I hit pause and then I unloaded, it stopped the job over there. It would give me the option to resume, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to continue on where I left off. And so I'm just going to click this little button that is going to cancel. Okay, and so now when I've got my little blue send button again, that means that it is fine and ready to go again with the fresh job for whatever I've got on the page. So I'll click send. Okay, and it's also, even if you do a test cut, it's a good idea to kind of check and see if that really did cut all the way through before you unload it, because you could send it through one more time. If you unload your machine first, then you can't get it back to its exactly the same position. So if you leave it in your machine before you unload it and check, you just send it through one more pass. Okay, so I've got these two little tags. You can either pull them off individually or you can peel off the whole paper. Sometimes it depends on the design and how intricate it is, whether I choose to pull it all off at once or kind of weed away the extra first. Okay, so I've got these cute little gift tags, and you can just stick some cute thread or ribbon there. You could use this for a stamp. If we'd gotten into more complex things, you could sketch on it. We've got a sketching class that's really fun, and we've done a class through Michael's that's sketching. So sketching would be a fun option to do on a gift tag. So do we have any questions?
Kelly, one question that we have is how you canceled the job.
Okay, so canceling the job, when you realize that your machine is doing something you don't want, let me see if we can we see this panel on the Cameo? Okay, so when you have something loaded, so what shows on your touchscreen panel is a little bit different depending on if it's loaded, if it's in the middle of a job or whatever. So while it's cutting, it's got this little flashing icon, and it looks like a pause button. So I just tapped the pause button that was on that panel, and that paused the job. And then I went into my software and just clicked the X to cancel the job.
Okay, one other question we have is this class being recorded, and where can they see it again?
Yes, this class is being recorded. You can find it on the Silhouette YouTube channel within a couple of days. Let's see. Let me screen share again, because this is a good way to show you these other resources one more time. So if you go to YouTube, Oh, I think I lost my screen share again. Okay, so looking at YouTube, you want to go to Silhouette Inc. And in particular, this class, oh, looks like there we are live right now. We've actually got a playlist right here for live classes. So you can look at this playlist. I've actually taught this class a couple of times already, and then it'll show up at the bottom of the list in a day or so for Introduction to Silhouette Studio. You can also look at some of these past classes. These ones here were Michael's classes that were also put on the Silhouette YouTube channel. One more shout out to the playlists that you want to watch. These Silhouette 101 video classes are awesome. Well, I shouldn't say that. They're my classes. I think they're awesome. They were filmed with the Cameo 3, but the software is pretty much the same. And it'll give you a great overview on how to use vinyl or heat transfer or print and cut. I've also got one for the 3D printer, the Alta printer, sketch pens. So there's a whole bunch of full-length classes. These are all like anywhere between 45 minutes and more than an hour. Nice in-depth on the various materials. And then these other playlists, if you go to playlists, to look at all of the features, this one's a good one. Silhouette Studio version 4.1 how-to videos. There are almost 80 videos in that list. And then I did another set when version 4.2 came out. So features for 4.2, features for 4.3, those are all there, and they just kind of build on each other. So if you're looking at 4.3, you're not going to see all the other ones that still apply to you. So you want to look at 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, and we need to get up 4.4. I know there's a couple videos we released for those. So these are good playlists. So Silhouette YouTube channel and silhouette101.com. Those are great resources for you to keep learning and keep building on the skills. So my best advice for you is to just start cutting. The scariest thing about a new machine is the first one or two cuts. I've had machines that I actually let sit for a month or two before I got to them because it just felt a little intimidating. But once I started using it, I loved it. So best advice is just start doing it. Pick a beginner tutorial and follow along and do it. Cut some gift tags today or make them longer, turn them into bookmarks, anything like that. Do we have any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for joining me, and hopefully you've learned a lot. Hopefully we've taken a little bit of the intimidation factor away, and just hope you enjoy cutting with your Silhouette machine. Thanks.